Dr. Navin, knowing your background, I have a question for you, right? See, there's been it may be interesting to the audience too, there's been a lot of buzz on generative AI, especially with the launch of ChatGPT in the market in the last couple of years. As a AI educationist too, where do you see things are heading and what is the impact of this in the market?
Yeah, you're able to hear me, right? Yeah, thank you. So before I start, I would like to thank Sam and Shubha for this opportunity. Actually, Sam called me, I think a week back and asked me, are you available on 6th for a session? We have had these kind of conversations for many times before, and I thought it's a technical session to a technical group, right? I said yes, then I realized it's in LitFest. So anyway, hope I don't make a meal of it. Okay, so I'm sure last 2 years, little bit less than 2 years, all of you have heard about ChatGPT, generative AI, and things of that nature, right? So without getting too much technical, so I just want to summarize what exactly is that in terms of the technology behind it. So because it's a LitFest, I'll probably use library as an example. Think you have access to a very large library which has all the books published throughout human history. It hosts all the books. And it has all the music created, all the movies created in the past, whatever, right, in the history of humankind. Let's assume for a minute you have a machine or a program, right? Machine is a program for us, which is capable of assimilating all of this information. Let's assume for a while. Now, let's say that it has done that. Now, this machine, what it has in itself is the ability that it has abstracted out a lot of these concepts and ideas from these various artifacts created by human beings over our history. Right? Let's say that that machine is ready right now. Now, as an author, right, or as an avid reader, because I'm not creative, right? So let's say that I want to visualize a Sherlock Holmes novel set in medieval history, right? Obviously, now I'll ask this machine, can you create a plot line for Sherlock Holmes from medieval history? Now, because it knows how Sherlock Holmes, it has read all the 56 short stories of Sherlock Holmes and all the 4 long stories, and also it knows how medieval times existed. Now you have a Sherlock Holmes character who is using his detective skills in a 14th century city, right? That's one aspect. Now, extending further, I got inspired by what Ashwin was talking in the previous segment, right, about the Hitchcock and bladder and things like that, right? Now, extending this further, now I can also ask this machine, I want to have a movie script which has Hitchcockian flavor in terms of tension building and suspense, set in the backdrop of Bollywood, right? Think of it, I mean, Hitchcock characters running around trees, right? That's what I had in my mind, but I didn't think about the bladder issue till Ashwin was talking about it, right? Now, again, stretching it further, we talked about movies and books. The third thing is extending it further, music, right? People, connoisseurs of Western classical music like Beethoven, can I have a melody which takes elements from Beethoven and say the fine melodies of classical Carnatic music? Now the machine can do it. The fourth one, painting, right? Obviously, we have heard about Van Gogh and our own Raja Ravi Verma, right? Who gives extreme attention to details with Indian themes. So that is possible right now. So what these generative AI models are basically, these have consumed and assimilated all this data which is present on internet, publicly available wherever it is, and it has abstracted out these novel ideas, not novel necessarily, but these ideas, concepts, and now just like somebody has read all the books, we assume that person is going to be creative and it can generate things. So this is what generative AI is all about. This is what ChatGPT is all about. So before that, what used to happen till 2017 and 18 when GPT technology was created by a set of Google engineers, AI basically alluded to a set of concepts where it could derive insights from a set of data. It couldn't create new data or new stories that I spoke about. So that's the distinction. So what you have seen in last 2 years basically started in 2017 when a set of Google engineers created this so-called transformer model, and they actually put it out in public, right? I'm sure they're regretting it now because many folks like OpenAI and others actually picked from it, and then they started this revolution. So sorry, a long-winded answer, but I thought I'll use these examples given the occasion. Right? So coming back to you, Rajesh, obviously you are a practitioner, and as Sam mentioned, you have been working with various industries on implementing and probably using this AI and IoT and other technologies in transforming digital landscape of your customer. Just wanted to get your perspective, what's really happening on the enterprise side?
Thanks, Dr. Navin. So from AI in the enterprise world, there is a lot of impact, both on the generative side and also traditional AI side. So let me give some examples which probably the audience here will be able to relate, right? So now when you go and apply for, let's say you want to construct a home and you want to apply for a loan, there were human intervention where they will review the application, look at your credit score, history, and then take a decision. All these are going to be a little bit time consuming. Now AI is now trained, like what Dr. Navin said, right? Trained on tons of corpus data. So in a matter of few seconds, it can decide uh, whether someone is eligible or not, and also explain the rationale behind the decision. So this is an interesting area, and I have some experience working on that. The second area is finding anomalies. So detecting fraud in finance, looking at patterns and determining where there could be a financial crime. That's an area of interest too. In simple retail world, where we are managing inventories in say shops, and they are connected to distribution centers, AI comes in very handy to do demand forecasting and stock management. So how do I know that I need to order thousands of say nuts or bolts that goes into machinery? Looking at your consumption pattern, AI can now determine and say, okay, by next month you will need 2,000 more, and December it's going to go down. But these are things that AI does it using demand forecasting and advanced tech. And if you go to health world, already some of you might be experiencing, right? Go to a radiologist, and they take time to look at your X-ray and then give a report. To avoid manual error and also to speed up efficiency, AI is already doing image recognition, is able to give a level of diagnosis. Of course, it cannot replace a doctor, but it does give a level of efficiency for the radiologist to finally decide where the issue could be. So the applications of AI is just increasing by leaps and bounds, and just a few areas that I mentioned. And of course, the most interesting one is in the area of chatbots, where you interact with AI chatbots, be it in doing your regular bank transaction. Of course, they're a little bit in an infancy, but things are evolving there. And also in the medical world, I've been associated with a client work where post-operative care, where patients who have been operated on heart surgeries or lung, they can interact with the AI chatbot and get suggestions. It does not replace a doctor again, but they can get post-operative care to tell them what is to be done and not to be done. So the field is wide, very vast, and I can go on and on into automotive and other areas too, but it's very exciting times that we are in, technology-wise. So, Dr. I have some. So, given your background as an educationist, my questions are a little bit towards it, but you can answer it this way, right? So, there has been a traditional way to how students have been educated, and with this Gen AI into the market, there is an impact already. People are using generative AI. What do you see as a technologist in the AI, especially in education, where is it heading towards, and what are your perspectives on that?
Thank you, Rajesh. So as I mentioned, last 18 to 20 months, I've been part of the learning and development team at Infosys. And also, I lead the AI enablement for all of Infosys globally. So I do believe if there is any single big significant impact of AI and generative AI, which is happening right now, it's in the education field. So how many of you are teachers here? Anybody? Right? So, great. Oh, nice. So one thing I've observed is we do train people at scale, right? When you talk about Infosys, we get around 15, 20,000 trainee graduates every year, and each batch will have around 1,000 engineers. And one thing, as teachers, you may have observed, each one of them will come with their own baseline skills, backgrounds, and their learning speed is quite different, right? For example, in some of the topics, say, take math. I'm not talking about Java and AI here, but take mathematics as an example. They might be very good in fractions, which might come in chapter 2, right? They may be slow there, but they may pick up speed in chapter 6, which is, say, some other algebra, right? Now, as teachers, when we create the lesson plan, we usually allocate, okay, 1 hour for chapter 1 and 10 hours for all the chapters, right? We don't really go by the learner's pace, right? We don't individualize learning. So I think what generative AI allows us right now is basically to personalize learning at scale. So for example, say we have a course for 1 month, right? And typically we see that we kind of force all of them to complete this course within 1 month, irrespective of their learning speed, right? So what we have done within our own learning management system is we have embedded generative AI where we ask certain pre-assessment questions. Again, using generative AI. We don't really do that, we don't put human effort. Now, the way they answer questions, we create learning paths very specific to that person, right? And then when we do assessments later, the learning paths for each person will be different, right? So the idea here is within 1 month, each person would have taken a different learning path. Some person who's very weak in certain areas, they would get additional exercises, additional assignments and things of that nature, right? Which would not have been possible earlier. So that's something which is doable, and I'm sure if you follow, some of the educationists may follow Khan Academy, right? They are also doing things of this nature. So one big advantage is personalization at scale using generative AI in education. That's one thing. And also as educators, we keep creating certain courses, right? Now we have this chapter, modules. For each module, we need to create quizzes, assessments, assignments, right? Now with generative AI, we are actually saving around 70 to 80% of the time which we used to spend earlier. Third thing which I'm more excited is stuff I talked about right now are called hard skills, right? Math, Java or something. But where I believe it's more, there's something more exciting is in the aspect of soft skill training. Right? For example, for my sales folks, if I have to create a course on negotiating skills, or say somebody is coming to office quite late every day, right? I can, using natural language, I can actually create simulation, right? Okay, I am a manager. I'll just type it in my system. I am a manager. One of my team members is coming very late to office. Now create a scenario where my team member can go through it, and then the generative AI will start posing some questions, right? And the way they answer, now we are achieving two things, right? One, they'll get exposed to different scenarios as a participant. At the end of it, the AI itself will create an assessment, right? Okay, 10 questions. And then based on assessment, we'll tell that, okay, now I have enabled this person in soft skill areas like time management, or also some of these areas, for example, how to recognize unconscious bias at work. It's very difficult to create courses unless you have a simulation-based model. So these are some of the things. And for those teachers who know about different pedagogies, right? Different pedagogies actually help people learn better. For example, one could be something called analogy learning, right? Where you teach a hard concept using some analogies. One good example could be when you're teaching electric circuits. One way to teach electric circuits is about talking about how water flows from a high pressure area to a low pressure area. So we can actually prompt the AI the large language models or generative AI models to say that, okay, this is my scenario, can you give me some analogies? Another one is Socratic learning, which has existed since time immemorial, right? Where instead of teaching a concept, you basically ask students a particular question, right? Say in history, if somebody wants to know what were the reasons for World War II, one way to do that is I will create a simulation within AI. I want you behave as a Socratic teacher now. And the kind of questions you get from the tutoring system is, do you think the Treaty of Versailles was very bad for Germans? What do you think about do you think the economic conditions in Germany in 19th and 20s probably led to what happened in 30s, right? So these are the things we can do. And there are multiple other methods where storytelling method. For example, I can ask AI to create a story of Indian struggle for independence, right? In form of a mythological story, right? Because people, for those who are history students who didn't like history, right? Because it was all about learning some dates and things like that. Now, if I read that in the form of a story created by AI without human intervention, nothing like that. So you both have an educator level intervention here and a great learning experience. So I'm not even getting into the administrative tasks about automatic grading and things like that, which has existed in the past. But generative AI has opened us to a world of new things which was not possible, say, before 2022. So this is something not all hi-fi or something in the future. This is happening right now, and within our firm we are doing it. We see a lot of other forward-looking education institutes actually doing something around that.
Very insightful.
Yeah. So one thing we struggle in our, when we implement these AI projects is the issues around ethics, privacy, intellectual property, and things of that nature, right? For example, as I mentioned earlier, all these models are built on data and what humans have produced earlier. So just wanted to understand, obviously you're introducing AI in your enterprise for different clients. How do you take care of these issues around ethics, responsibility, accountability, and just wanted your thoughts on that.
Sure. So what we do to ensure the AI models are fair, right? And that's the question. The other way is, how do you ensure the decisions that AI is taking is right? So there are 2-3 facets to it. First is when we develop a model, AI model, we actually anonymize personalized data as much as possible. So it is trained on a corpus of data where your personally identifiable information, could be your date of birth, could be your phone numbers, those things are never part of the model training. So the AI model will be built based on anonymized data. Second is, we also ensure that there is a lot of, there could be bias, right? Depending on what is exposed to the AI model. Say, if I want to actually, let's say, develop a model that is going to suitability of certain profiles for home loans, for example, what kind of data am I training on? Is it discriminatory? Does it have any bias? So we try to ensure that there's a balance of data, which means all kinds of profiles with varied scores, varied background are there for the model to train. Imagine AI model is nothing but like a baby, right? It has to understand the data, and then over a period of time, it gets the insight, or I would popularly call it as intelligence, to start determining something is what is a step to take given a particular situation. So bias management is extremely important. And third is compliance with regulatory bodies, ensuring that, in Europe, for example, GDPR standards. In India, it's not evolved to that much, but we have to ensure that we don't violate any kind of legal things, frameworks, and regulatory bodies of different countries that we operate. So I would say it's ensure your diverse set of data, minimize bias, and also have a governance that is going to continuously look into this and see those models that we develop are always up to date and there is no drift of the model. Which means, what I mean by drift here is, if it's working well today and giving you a very high accuracy, it should work the same maybe 6 months down the line. So how do we ensure it? to again get it retrained, to bring it on par with what is happening. So a lot of such things goes on behind the scene when we develop and deploy a model into the market. And my question to you is a follow-up, because you mentioned earlier about AI in the creative world. There's a lot of aspiring authors too, and there are writers here. So what would you, in your experience, give or offer that to the writer community that they can tap into using the different LLMs and Gen AI capability? How could they tap into what they're doing?
Okay. So, as I mentioned earlier, these models are created based on data already published. So they have a lot of concepts, ideas abstracted within themselves. So I recall Ramesh Arvind sir in the morning talking about some ideas striking at 3 a.m., right? And Ashwin later talking about writer's block, right? Typically, these are things I believe. I'm not a writer, so if I wake up at 3 a.m., nothing will strike to me. But again, knowing what I know, at least in the limit, within the context of generative AI, what I have seen and read about is you may have a thought process as a writer. You may have been stuck somewhere, right? And you can prompting, I'm sure you know, right? You typing, just like Googling, you type some prompts into the generative AI model. You can actually ask for it to give some ideas based on what you have developed so far in terms of your storyline. Or in fact, if you want to start from the beginning, you might ask, okay, these are some of my thoughts. Can you create a high-level plot line? And by the way, this is not plagiarism, because even I believe the authors, the bona fide author also, they are basically getting this inspiration from their life experiences, and as Ramesh sir was mentioning earlier, the thousands of books they have read. So you can use generative AI for one inspiration perspective to give you creative ideas. It can apply for music also, right? For example, you want to create some new melody, right? And you have some ideas, you can prompt it to give some ideas. And so this is on the creative and inspirations fact, right? To help you to augment your potential, so to say. But more other side of the equation is, it can also improve your productivity, right? For example, when you write a novel, how to structure the sentences. You have written everything. How to make sure that, I'm not talking about typo or spelling mistake, but how to structure your flow. All those things can be done by AI. And in the music world, now you have AI-based music mixer. They mix music where probably it's way better than some of the tools that exist. So from my perspective, in the creative field, generative AI can be used to make you more creative, the way I mentioned before, and also make you more productive, right? So these are broadly the two areas I feel which might be more useful, and this is as it stands as of now. Okay, one thing we need to realize is this field, even though it started in 2017, last 2 years it has really kicked off, and practically every single day we are seeing a lot of changes, right? I mean, I'm sure you must be hearing news around GPT, something came up. And if you go to Twitter, you will always see some of the new tools coming up and things of that nature. So I'm sure in the future it will become much better, right? So segueing from here, Rajesh, in terms of, as I mentioned, there are a lot of new things coming up, right? What do you think are some of these new things, and what keeps you excited in what you do in terms of this generative AI evolution and so-called revolution happening right now?
Sure. So I think, like I said, it's technology-wise, it's the most exciting decade to be, personally, right? And a lot happening. When I say a lot happening, now AI has become a little bit mainstream. I'm not sure if how many of the folks in this hall would have not even used ChatGPT and so forth. And there is always this question of, will AI surpass human intelligence? Will it become super intelligent? Will it have any impact? And the experts are torn between two different camps. When I say that, if you look at the father of modern AI, called Geoffrey Hinton, and also Jan LeCun, They have very differing views on this too. So there's a huge camp on what would happen. But my perspective is, let's see what is coming in our horizon, right? Let's leave it to the experts for a moment. But what are the exciting things coming? So you can already see many of us are using smartphones, right? And AI penetrating into smartphone will help us schedule, manage our schedules better. Could also have a bearing on mental health. There's already applications that are getting rolled out using AI, which are very suggestive in terms of what you need to do. And even your smart watches are now determining certain things, and they can get into diagnostics. This purely from the personal space. Now, when you step out of your homes and you are into, go to your place of work or university, transportation. And in India, it's going to take, it may not be evident, but in the West, it's already being discussed. Autonomous vehicles, self-driven cars. And having self-driven cars, can it improve efficiency? Will there be less accidents? Will AI manage people, and will vehicle transport be used for purely point-to-point service than people driving on the road? Exciting in the sense that it takes off the pressure of driving, and it streamlines traffic management and so forth. But then when you move a little bit ahead, even in health sector, medical diagnostics, like I mentioned earlier, I was involved in some work where we are doing image recognition and are intercepting certain things for the benefit of the radiologist. So increasingly we can see that medical community will apply a lot of AI in terms of proactive diagnosis, understanding the reports, and also offering the end user, in this case the patient, much more accurate diagnostics. Moving a little bit more, right, in the retail world, we could see there's a mix of things that are happening in IoT and AI, right? You'd be using your refrigerator, you could have stocked, say, milk, butter, and they're getting over small Internet of Things. IoT means Internet of Things. These devices can monitor the quantity of it and automatically be able to order a backfill. So it's going to take off some of the manual things that we do to, where does it really change our focus then, right? So leaving all the majority of very purely manual labor to AI, it could actually repurpose more and more into the creative terrain. So it's pretty exciting times. And these are uncertain times where, it can appear like, what happens if there is change? But every 100 years, there have been some kind of revolution technology-wise. I think we'll have to embrace it and adopt to it and move along with it. And as a continuation of this, my question to you, Navin, will be, you mentioned about creating, using generative AI to create for writers, right? And I see that as it can also minimize the cost of developing an entire product, because there are text-to-video generators, there are text-to-image generators, text-to and getting an entire plot and so forth. Now with this thing exploding, there is always a fear in the writers community too, right? What could eventually happen? Will people have a lot of similar content? How will my creativity will be valued over somebody else? Where do you see this? What do you see as impact of this into the writer world in terms of their security and job security?
I think probably I'll address, I think you're talking about job loss, right? I think this is $1 million question. Then I'll come to the writer segment. I think whenever a new technology has been introduced, probably for past 400, 500 years, starting from Industrial Revolution, there has always been a fear, right, that this will lead to job loss. I think that's probably due to the fact that as human beings, we only look at existing jobs and jobs in the past in terms of the impact. We rarely realize that any new technology actually brings in a lot of new jobs as well, right? That's number one. I think there are many examples. For example, when steam engine came in 18th century, or telegraph came in, telephone came in, when Ford created these mass machines, they were always these concerns. Okay, my carriage industry will go away. My mining industry, with mechanization, they told that there won't be enough miners. But exactly the opposite happened. It basically made people more productive and created a whole lot of new jobs. In the last 20th century also, we had aeroplanes, the nuclear energy, silicon, and the internet, right? When the internet came in, people actually talked about, do we need office workers? It just made office workers more productive, right? Similarly, the smartphones. I don't think any of them actually led to reduction in jobs. When it comes to writers here, I mean, all of us need to assume that these are models created based on past human output. But I don't think they will be able to create something on their own in the sense of knowledge creation. Right? For example, say I read 1,000 books. I don't think I'll still be able to create a new book. Right? So that's something human there. Right? So that's number one. I believe that in that way, we won't be replaced, at least the writer community. Right? So my sense is it will make us more productive and make less creative people look more creative, right? So that is the possible impact, but it may not rob somebody of their job. So that's what I feel from a writer perspective, right? So again, extending this even further, it's not only about writer. If you look into the literature and some of the tweets on Twitter these days, there's something called as AI doomerism, where they talk about existential crisis to humankind, in the sense that they'll become super intelligent, right? And they become super intelligent, they talk about, okay, they're going to rule us and things like that. So what's your opinion on that? Is it even real? Are we on the pathway to super intelligence? Super intelligence is where a system will be more intelligent than all of us combined together, the entire human race, 8 billion or 9 billion people. Do you think we are there? Will we be there? What are your thoughts?
Sure. Very, very interesting question. See, like I said, the experts are divided about where we are heading. So let's take, when we talk of AI, it is artificial intelligence, right? And that's only one aspect of it. It's more about analytical, and I can say analytical and language. But human intelligence is much more vaster, right? You have emotional intelligence, you have social intelligence, you have spiritual intelligence. There's a lot of other things that are, in fact, and your environmental intelligence. All this play a factor. AI, when we say it goes to AGI, what we call as, now we are in a period called as artificial narrow intelligence, ANI. And what is expected is next jump will be to AGI, artificial general intelligence, which will be equal to human intelligence. And then we talk about super intelligence. Now, one camp says that we are pretty near it. You know, we are probably 2-3 years away before AGI is in place, and another few years the super intelligence should come in play. There's another camp which says that, you know, we are probably decades away, so there's nothing to worry. But irrespective, my own take is on this is, it is impossible to replace the human intelligence. The reason is, when AI solves a problem, it is solving based on a set of pattern, what it has been exposed to. But there's no will in it, right? When we write a story as a writer or an author, there's a will for us as to why we are creating that as part of the craft. Absence of will never make a super intelligence equal even to human intelligence. But does it have destructive powers? The answer is yes, right? We cannot say. So it is left to how the individuals will use. So what is more important is, as this technology grows, we need strong regulations, especially in developing countries like India. We need to bring frameworks where this is not going to be abused or put to ill use. And other areas that we can look at is where where we build models and AI things with no bias or less bias. So there is fairness, there is transparency. And the third thing is, and since you are in the education industry too, is to skill and reskill, which means as our next generation comes up, start embracing the technology, right? We have all adopted to smartphone in a very short time. So it's possible to see how we can embrace this as a craft. So there is two ways, right? Either do not fight against a tsunami, right? But can you ride with the wave? Can you embrace a change? Can you reskill? Can you see how you can exploit the technology to doing things that you can do much more better? That's the way I feel.
Thank you, Rajesh. Before we open it up for questions, so I also want to add my own perspective because I do a lot of sessions for senior executives and even in colleges and faculty and students. This is the question I often get asked. Okay, so will they replace human beings outside of the routine tasks, right? So I just want to put in some context here. These models. So these models I talked about it. Let's take GPT-4. When I talked about training data, what is the training data it has been exposed to or it has ingested, right? So we're actually talking about 10 to the power 13 bytes. So to put it in context, if they say all these bytes are converted to books, and as a human being, if you read these books 8 hours per day, it will take you around 170,000 years to complete all these books. So that is the level of data it has been trained of. We may think it's big, this knows everything. But it may not be because ultimately it has been trained on human output produced in the past. One good thought experiment could be, is it really intelligent to progress human evolution, right? Go back to 1904. I'm sure many of you might be aware. This is the year when Einstein produced his 3 major papers, which basically changed the course of science or physics, right? Photoelectric effect and the special theory of relativity. Right? Now, if we go back in time and collect all the published materials till 1903, do you think these AI models could produce what Einstein produced? Absolutely no, because they're just memorizing and creating patterns from what in the past and basically making an increment. They're not creating any new knowledge, so to say. I'm not discounting the fact that they're quite helpful, can be productive and make us more efficient, but to become super intelligent, they should be at least reaching levels of our physicists, right? They're not there yet, right? But it is not to say that these are not going to replace some activities in the job. It does, but I don't think the question should be that, okay, is it going to replace human beings? I think human beings are much more than some of the tasks we look at, right? So while it's a great tool and probably it will improve in the future, but I'm sure human beings being very creative, right? They'll find a way around to make use of it rather than being subdued by it, right? I think with this probably we can go for a few questions from the audience. Yeah.
Sir, basically, generative artificial intelligence does not understand what it generates. And there are problems of deep fake and fake news and also misinformation. How to overcome this? Being a professor in a college teaching management, I propose that nothing is equal to the chalk piece and the blackboard.
I'll take it and you can, okay. So I have differing views on it. One thing, these generative AI models create data which looks realistic. By design, they need not be based on reality. We need to understand that. They are not a reflection of reality. The words they produce, they look realistic in nature. Okay, so that is what generative AI is all about. So that's number one. We need to acknowledge that this is not Google which goes and finds out information and this is basically creating stuff, right? Now, obviously, deep fakes and other things are is an issue, right? Now, there are a lot of work in progress to make sure that to put in enough guardrails, right? This whole stream is called responsible AI and the so-called explainability, where you have means to basically put all this under certain guardrails and then take it forward. Third thing is, there are a lot of governments, especially in the European Union, where they've come out with AI Act, where they make sure, I think it came out just 2 months ago, extremely well written, where they make sure that, okay, if you are creating any AI tool, it needs to go through this set of checklists. But you'll always have some rogue actors who will manipulate, and it's nothing related to AI. Whereas I understand your perspective. I always believe pen and chalk is the best way, but again, but we should not ignore the benefits generative AI gives. Because I've seen personally, I talked about personalization of certain segments of students, right, where it really helps, where they need to take their own path, especially in early learning years. I think this has great value. So Rajesh, you have any perspective?
Just, I think it's comprehensive. Only one point I want to add on top is, see, generative AI works on the backbone, what we call as large language model. And if you look at the last couple of years, ChatGPT has created a kind of hype and sensation in the market. And what we call in LLM training is hallucination. There are hallucinations happening. But if you look at increasingly the newer versions that are getting released, the hallucinations are getting in control. So they are being, so I'm saying it's in the infancy phase now. So it will not stop here. It's only going to get better and better in terms of its output. That's all.
Hi. Here, you would have come across this meme which talks about how a lady is saying, you know what, I want AI to do my laundry and dishes so that I can do my writing and art, and not for AI to do my writing and art so that I can do the laundry and dishes. Okay, so I feel that, AI, if it is mispurposed or, directed wrongly, can reduce human intellectual pursuit, and that's the bigger danger. Of course, reduction of jobs and stuff like that are dangers, but the greater intelligent pursuit that human beings will crave for, AI could well have enabled that, but is it moving in the opposite direction is my question.
Yeah, my own view is, I think lazy people who don't want to do laundry are saying that, but anyway. So, okay, no, I mean, you are right in many ways, right? But look at it. How many of us really think that AI is going to basically do most of our things so that we get a lot of time to be creative? I don't think, you see, AI has been there for last 40, 50 years, right? That's a fact. What we're talking about AI right now is basically generative AI, which is probably just 2.5 years old, right? We have not seen any instance of us moving in this direction where it is significantly changing our day-to-day life, except making us perhaps a little bit better, little bit more productive, making us look smarter, right? So at least at this point of time, I don't think I basically accept that we are headed there. So Rajesh, your perspective?
Yeah, just only one more to add. There is, see, like Navin was mentioning earlier, Einstein's example. AI today can only solve, it has patterns and it can only produce answers based on what it has seen. It is not capable of solving unseen problems like human beings. So it is not going to happen just because AI does not have a, what we call consciousness or atma or soul, right? From where the will is generated. So to do that, AI is, it's a big gulf. But can AI become more and more powerful? The answer is yes, because if you expose it to more and more corpus data, it can. But can it give original content? Can it become a creative author? Can it become a physicist like Einstein? It is not going to be possible at all. It is not going to ever happen.
Sir?
As we are running out of time, further questions can be taken in the author's lounge. Thank you so much for that insightful and comprehensive discussion about AI and IoT.